Okay, we're back after uploading the other one. YouTube is currently marinating, spicing up the previous video, and so I can continue with this one. 3 videos in one day. What did you guys do wrong? My goodness. Anyway, all right. So now we're on to the gig economy, also referred to as the sharing economy. And I think people would be surprised what, if they have an idea what the gig economy is, they might be surprised on what's included in that. I know even when I was going through it, I thought, well, how is that? That's added in there. Anyway, I think most people think of the gig economy as being all like high-tech stuff. Use of apps or use of new use of technology or specific technology, but that's not actually what it refers to necessarily. But the gig economy is obviously much bigger in younger generations, although, again, surprisingly, the participation of it stretches into the boomer generation as well. So anyway, a couple of things that I pulled out here just to talk about it is, so this is obviously Americans here, but this makes sense in terms of why would they leave their own job. So these are people that have decided to leave a typical hourly job, not necessarily a full-time job, but an hourly job. So hate their boss, burnout from the 9 to 5, toxic workplace, job transition, doesn't pay enough in their current job, or they want flexibility. So all of those things I think can apply to different people. This one here, this flexibility part, I think that's a big part of why younger workers are attracted to the gig economy, the sharing economy. Once they've, obviously economic necessity, being able to get yourself food and stuff is a big part of it. But I think that once that part is kind of figured out, maybe if they have the skills to transition between different places and they've had a few jobs or whatever, or prospects at least, they want that flexibility of not having to stay in the same job for 20 to 30 years or whatever it is. Okay. All right. Freelancers. What are they making all over the globe earning? I don't like the way they worded this, but what are freelancers all over the globe earning? So basically, as you look through here, you see the biggest chunk is $6 to $10 an hour, and $5 and less is the third biggest chunk. But you can see that if you put those numbers all together, put those numbers all together, you get over almost 60% are working for $15 or less an hour, right? And that is not better than your typical part-time gig doing a bunch of different other things, right? So freelancing does have its pitfalls. It has its traps, and it's the same thing with, it's looking at, if you look at a job like a sales job you could do really well. If you're a real estate agent, you're a car salesperson, you're a door-to-door salesperson, you make lots of money, you could do really well. But there are lots of people in those jobs that don't do very well. And you see, again, the large percentage, this is 57%, that aren't doing better in this particular chosen line of work. Now, maybe they're doing better because they would have nothing. Maybe they're happier with it. There's other measurements to make, but it is interesting to see about earnings. All right, next one. Who's looking for these? I think I'm going to come back to that one in a second. I'm going to go down to here. Top paying gig jobs. So here's where I think, do you think of these as a gig job? So I'm sure that people think of freelancing as a gig job. Probably delivery as a gig job, driving, right? Local guiding, those ones for sure. I don't know how many of the other ones people necessarily think of. as gig jobs. Those I think jump out because this is deliveries like, skip the dishes, for instance. That looks like something else, but skip the dishes. This one's like Uber or Lyft. Local guides. This one is interesting. So in Canada, go out local guides. If you have to be bilingual, so you work for the National Park Service, something like that, which would not make you a gig employee, it would make you a different one, but you don't get as much money in Canada to be a guide, but in Europe you do get paid a lot because you have to have a ton of education behind you, which is very interesting. But there's strict rules. I've been on quite a few tours in Europe, like school trips, and it's interesting how local guides can only go so far versus other guides. So they have rules. Like for instance, your tour guide can lead you to, say, the palace in Madrid, but they can't talk to you about anything about the palace once you get on the palace grounds. That is a tour guide that works for the palace then that has to do that. The person you're with, if they get caught doing any guiding or anything like that, whatever you want to call it, they get in a lot of trouble and they get fined. So it's very interesting how that stuff works. These other ones, I guess, teaching abroad. I'm not sure if that used to be a big thing. I'm not sure if it's still a big thing. I have a friend of mine who went to Japan to teach English, and he's never come back. I plan on visiting him one day, but that's nothing about our class. But that's that was a common one. My wife's friend is she teaches in Mexico, but she started in Turkey to begin with. So there's those options I think are still out there in terms of teaching abroad. Freelance could be anything, of course. Massage therapy. Again, I don't know if we think of that as a gig economy job, but it is. But when you think about it, you think of it more of like that's a independent contractor. But an independent contractor, that's part of this gig economy. All like anything where you are free to move about and build your own client base and stuff like that, they classify, as a gig economy job, right? So I don't think people have as broad a definition of I don't think they have as broad a definition as brought up. So a labor market characterized by the prevalence of short-term contracts or freelance work. So basically anything that's not permanent, full-time permanent job can be categorized as a gig economy. So when we look at some of these statistics, got to keep that in mind. So here they look at, who is demanding these temporary workers. And they're talking about how startups were the biggest draw. So, right, 37% versus now 19% just a year ago or a year and a bit ago. What has changed, right? And this is an increase of corporations, an increase, professional services, an increase, and other sectors have decreased, in terms of that. That's a decrease as well. And this one's a decrease. So everything's gone down except for the corporations and the professional services. Now, you can look at this in a number of ways. The way I look at it is that startups used people that were freelancers because they couldn't afford to have a payroll that was permanent. They couldn't afford the benefits and the payroll tax and all that stuff to permanently pay people for their work. So a startup company that was, say, like a tech company, you'd hire a whack of programmers, and they would work until they released the software, and then they were done. They would go and find another tech company to work for, and that's they could, depending on their skill and the necessity for their particular skills, they could make a lot of money, or they maybe don't. A cousin of mine was a tester for a long time, and he didn't make anything. His money, he didn't make very much money at all. But if he was, I guess, a more skilled programmer, or maybe he got the right position with someone. I don't know. I guess I shouldn't say more skilled programmer because I have no idea how skilled he is. But anyway, just saying. But that's why startup companies can't afford. They don't have the capital. Now, the ones that can afford it, right? They don't have to, because people are opting for more freedom of movement, more freedom of switching jobs, not getting stuck in one spot, which, if that's what you want, that's great. But at the same time, there is a bit of an exploitation going on here. So companies will purposely now hire people on 6 months contracts or whatever it is, so they avoid paying costly things like benefit packages, retirement packages, things like that. So one of the big things that you hear about teachers and stuff is the retirement package. Well, that's there because of unions, which we'll talk about later. But that's there as because teachers don't move in and out of teaching all the time. They stay in and hopefully hone their craft as they progress. And I guess that's part of it. They get part of their reward, or part of the compensation, should call it compensation, is that retirement. Lots of other jobs like that, police officers, right? They get the same kind of thing. They stay in the police service. They get a good pension at the end. There's lots of ones like that. But as a society, we're moving away from that because people don't want to pay for that benefit. And companies don't want to pay for that benefit, and no one's going to hold their feet to the fire because, as we'll see coming up, everybody thinks that the big corporations should be the big players, and the people with all the money are the ones who make all the jobs happen in the economy. But we'll question that later on. But yeah, so looking at the gig economy, like I said, there's some of the big positives. So the big positives here, things like flexible schedule, flexible location, I guess we'll call it, where they work from, and they're not tied down. If you are somebody who can get a job in New York City, you want to work in New York City, and then you want to move back to Canada, or you want to go to Los Angeles, you want to go to Europe, as long as you can find a job, you can do that. Negatives are, benefits are limited. Pension, you probably have to take care of that yourself. And also, there's no security in this. That's the other thing, right? They don't have to worry about getting rid of you. There's going to be provisions in your contract that they have to keep you for so long, or they can get rid of you after so long, and they then have the opportunity just to get rid of you, and with little cost to them. So there are benefits on both sides, although I think with these numbers trending, the way these numbers are trending, I think you can see that the people that have the money have seen the trend in where to get workers and how to exploit the need or the desire for flexibility. So like Uber, for instance, we already talked about Uber and Uber Eats and all those ones. They don't pay very much for the most part. They wouldn't get away with that if they were a permanent taxi service, but they've pushed the taxi services out of the market because of their lower costs, but that means that their workers make less. So we've benefited a lot from this new type of economy, but we're also, we're paying the price, or somebody's paying the price at the same time. The other ones here that aren't mentioned, anytime you have, what do you call it, Airbnb, for instance, that's a gig economy. So now you have people that are able to rent out their place and make a little bit of money on the side. Now, what does it require for this? You require capital, right? You require, you require property. Oh man, property, but you require capital and resources and everything. You're not pulling yourself up from your bootstraps by engaging in something like Airbnb. There are other things that you could, but we can see once again that even in the gig economy, which is for some people they view it as a great leveler of society, it really isn't, because you need, if you have a lot of capital, I should say, it is much easier for you to start up in that and to be successful, to make a lot of money. A lot of the times you start with some kind of resource. Anyway, okay, so taking a look at that, you've got two things from today, both the underground economy, shadow economy, right? In terms of the arguments part, the chart there, that's in that, and then you've got looking at the sharing economy. So you make notes based on the questions that are on there, right? Statistics and stuff about that. Some of the stuff I've already talked about, but you'll make some notes about that as well. I just lost my train of thought. Just went right out of my head. Choo choo. Terrible. But yeah, okay. So basically, today is not about. No, that's not true. There we go. Okay, train's back on the track. Once you get done through the notes and stuff, then you'll have the assignment of talking about sharing economy versus government regulation. You have that, and then so that is the paragraph to write and to hand in, and the other one is going to a discussion, which I just remembered I don't think I actually opened up, so I'll have to do that right now. That is talking about the sharing economy and government regulation. So that's basically what our focus is today, is the idea between allowing for people to make money, but at the same time, how much regulation do we need to make it so it's still even is not the best word, but fairer, I guess. Okay. Alrighty. Talk at you tomorrow morning.